to, okay. Hello and welcome to everybody who's joined us to meet our visiting professor, Sue Kershaw. I'm Dr. Niamh Murtagh. I'm a senior research fellow at the school, and I'm also the interim careers tutor. And we've got the opportunity today of talking to Sue to get some insights around construction and infrastructure that could be useful for anybody thinking that's the career and area they want to go into. Before I introduce Sue, I'd like to introduce Chisaba on UK, who's our school events manager. And Chisaba is going to be helping us with just passing through the questions of the session today. So Chisaba, do you just want to explain to people how to pose their questions?
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. If you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A button. Please feel free to use that to drop any questions you want us to put through to Sue. Please don't use the chat function, as questions will get lost in there. If you use the Q&A button, that helps me keep an eye, and I will read your questions out to Sue, and she will respond to them. So yes, use the Q&A button when you're ready to ask a question. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Chisaba. So the format of what we'll do in the session is, for the first little bit, I have a few questions to put to Sue, really as a way of just introducing the session and also giving you a chance to think about the questions you want to ask Sue. So I'll keep that to 10-15 minutes at maximum, and then we'll open the floor to your questions, and we'll take it from there. So I would like to say I'm very pleased to be able to welcome Sue to talk to us this evening at UK time. Sue is a visiting professor at the school, and that's under the auspices of the Royal Academy of Engineering. And in her day job, Sue is Managing Director of Transportation at Costain. Costain, if you're not aware of it, is a UK company that's been around for over 100 years, turnover of over 1.5 billion, and focused on infrastructure, and particularly smart infrastructure. Over her career, Sue has developed an enviable reputation for managing complex construction and transport projects through to delivery, and often these have had the added pressure of high visibility and high social impact. Sue is a member of the Mayor of London's Infrastructure Advisory Panel and is the current president of the Association for Project Management. Before joining Costain, Sue was managing director on the Infrastructure Advisory Group at KPMG. Other positions included Director of Rail Europe at CH2M and Deputy Director of Transport for the Olympic Development at the Olympic Delivery Authority. Sue is a civil engineer and started originally with Taylor Woodrow. So I'm really pleased to welcome her because she has gone through the ranks of construction and particularly infrastructure. So we've got a great opportunity to find out a little bit about that background and her view in the industry today. So Sue, welcome, and thank you for joining us and for leaving your executive meeting to join us. I'd like to start by asking you about what brought you yourself to construction in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to talk to you and hopefully really ignite interest in you in coming into construction, whatever part of construction that is. It's a really growing profession at the moment, and with COVID and Brexit in the UK, it's definitely the place to be. So I was attracted into construction because my father was a dam builder. So I was born in New Zealand and lived in Pakistan and Nigeria. I followed my dad and with my mum and my sisters all around the world, building big hydroelectric schemes. And I loved the fact that you could watch what you were doing as a job really change people's lives and change people's lives in countries that you'd never been to before. So you had kind of that cultural experience as well as the work experience. And I think it's a thing common with many civil engineers that you do leave your own legacy. So when the Jubilee Line station, Canary Wharf, I actually opened the gates on the day it was commissioned and allowed the public in, and that's one of the proudest days of my life. So it's the fact that you do, and it sounds cheesy, but you are helping society actually survive, and that's becoming more and more powerful, as we know now, in these awful times we're in. So that's why I went, and I found there's a commonality in the construction fraternity of decent, authentic people who want to do a good job, who don't want to fleece people, who want to, you know, raise their families in a way that they feel proud about doing so, and that they often actually tend to have a sort of social life with like-minded people, so doctors, nurses, teachers, you know, people who are there. It's a vocation more than a job, if I'm honest, and that's a very, very powerful pull emotionally. If you get up in the morning because you want to make a difference, not because you want to earn another $10 or whatever. So that's the reason I'm in it, really, and that's really kept me going throughout these years. That the people make the projects is something I've discovered. They become almost a community within themselves, especially the big complex projects and programs, like HS2, for example, like the Olympics, like the Bangkok Second Stage Expresso I worked on. You end up with a community at work that look after each other and care about each other. And it's nothing, no one's told to do this. It kind of just happens automatically, because you're all working to one end goal, which is delivering that project or that program. You're not just there to do a 6-week campaign on something, or, you know, to do business planning for the next year. You're there to actually deliver that very tangible thing. So that's what's interested me. And yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Excellent. That really fascinating, actually, because and that actually you answered the question in a way I didn't quite expect, because quite often we talk about construction, we're talking about big projects and maybe the drama of that. But, you know, you touched on the societal impact and the legacy of what construction can do and do for people. So legacy, but also changing people's lives now. And yeah, really interesting focus on people, of like-minded professionals and decent people to work with, which is high praise, actually, for a sector. So when we were talking a little while ago, you mentioned to me that over the years you've been in construction, you've seen quite a few changes in how things are done. Could you tell us a little bit about sort of what struck you most in terms of changes you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched upon it a little bit there. On the mega projects and programs, particularly in the UK, we are in the public eye. You know, we're on the news, we're in the Evening Standard. You can't actually do something on a site near a residential area without thinking that someone might be filming you do it. So you've got to do it in the right way. So I think the presence has really increased over the last decade, I'd say. I remember working on the Jubilee line, where we were told specifically not to talk about work on the tube or in a lift. And, you know, we'd never really considered that before, but you just don't know who's listening, and you just don't know who could turn that into a bad news story. So I think we're much more overt as an industry. We're much more in the press, much more politicized, if you like. About HS2, you can see that happening. And also we're much more savvy. I mean, we've taken health and safety, which is when I started my career, was a brand new idea, health and safety. It's now really the best really treatment of it in the world. And we're looking at behavioural safety, we're looking at well-being, we're looking at occupational safety. So we're growing and evolving as an industry, taking care of our people who do work often in quite hazardous circumstances. We've also embraced technology. BIM has really made a difference to us, the building information and design management. We're looking at new technologies like drones doing surveys rather than people. We're looking at remote monitoring of embankments and bridges. So the technology and the innovation is there. I think it's become a much more inclusive industry. I mean, when I was at Surrey University, there was 4 women and 80 men on my course that year. That dwindled down to 2 and 80 men for various reasons, but it was really out of kilter with society, and it was also, you know, ethnically out of kilter as well. So I'm so pleased to see that change, and across the whole, not just the professional areas, but on the Olympics, we encouraged women to actually get trained to work on the machines that were digging up the Olympic Park, you know, so they could actually have a different type of job, one they wouldn't have thought of before, but they could be in control of, which I thought was a fantastic thing for us to do. And we also, as a local project there, we made sure we employed people from the 4 boroughs around us, but also had reach out to the rest of the UK in terms of supply. So we try to do our little bit of evening up with the economy. I think the other thing that's changed is people realise that construction will help us survive. I mean, Eisenhower saw it during the Great Depression. You've got to have something to keep a country going. And for 2 or 3 depressions we've had, or recessions, it works. You invest your time in the people and the projects that are needed anyway, but you might accelerate them. You might actually bring new ones on board. A great initiative at the moment with government is Project Speed, which is looking at projects that have been on paper for 10, maybe 20 years, getting them off the desk, you know, dusting them down, saying, look, how can we do this differently? How can we do it faster, better, greener? How can we actually make this local community who've been screaming out for this project actually can have it? Because we as an industry are working together collaboratively like never before. COVID has brought us together. Every cloud has a silver lining, and that's the one of COVID for construction. And the opportunities we have, in a way, are starting to outweigh the number of people, skilled people we have on board. But that's fine, because we can reach out to the industries that have been really hit hard. We can retrain, we can get people working in construction that would never have considered it before. So I think that there's huge differences that have been happening, and it means that the skill base of people we bring on board isn't as narrow as it used to be. You had to be, you know, civil engineer or a mechanical engineer or a quantity surveyor, and if you didn't go through those traditional routes, you weren't considered. But now, you know, you're geography grad, you've done economics, you might be a technician or an apprentice, you're all welcome, because what I always look for in the people I employ is that spirit of wanting to learn and wanting betterment for themselves and their families. You know, we can give them the training, we can give them the experience, but it's that state of mind that I need that means they're going to be really good people, they're going to deliver. And that's a different mindset as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think so you covered a lot there, but particularly what struck me was how the position you see that construction has now in a year of massive uncertainty and a future of massive uncertainty, and its importance. It's, you know, the critical nature to society, basically, is what you said, of, you know, of surviving, of society surviving, and also from a careers point of view, you're also pointing to the opportunities, and that those opportunities will continue, because we can't do without construction. Yeah, so there's several things there I'd like to follow up, but actually I see that we've got a few questions in, so let's start with those, and I can come back to other questions if I have an opportunity. So Jessica, we've got a question there in the Q&A.
Yes, so the first question is from Georgios, and the question is, did you know from the beginning that you wanted to work as a managing director while and after studying civil engineering? And a follow-up is, did you ever have a dilemma between following an engineer or management career? And if you did, why did you end up choosing the management path? And Georgia says, thank you very much. I really appreciate your interest and look forward to listening to your answer.
Lovely, that's so nicely put. Thank you very much. I'm a very curious person, so I find everything I do of interest. So I did a sandwich degree and worked on the Dartford Creek Barrier, which is part of the Thames flood defences. And I loved the fact of being out on site, mud on my boots, real life, you know, really gritty. Because I had to get to the site, I had to drive over on the moped, drive over the Dartford marshes, about 7 miles of nothingness to get there and crush concrete cubes at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was a hell of an experience. So when I went back to Surrey, I decided I didn't want to go the boring consultancy route. You know, I wanted to really get out there and be on the sharp end of things. And I did get trained through Taylor Woodrow, who were really, really good. And I got chartered by the time I was 24, and you know, I thought the world was my oyster, really. And then I always say to people, I never had a career plan. And I worry about people who have career plans beyond 2 years, if I'm honest, because you can't influence it. So it was just, to me, it was like a life plan. So I got chartered and I thought, what do I do next? And I thought, well, I was brought up overseas. Let's go back overseas and see what it's like as an adult. And that's when I went back to Thailand for 5 years, and actually, ironically, with a consultancy. because I wanted to learn what that side of the business was like and to work overseas, and then came back to the UK working with London Underground and Canary Wharf Station, because I wanted to find, I'd learned that transport was a really important part of infrastructure, and I wanted to learn what it's like from a client side. And so the story goes on. So I've worked, for a consultant, a contractor, a client, UK, overseas, big and large projects. And do you know what? That is the best place to be. I haven't done it deliberately, but it's given me experience of all those elements so that I can understand other people's points of view really, really well. And I've always worried when I was younger that, oh, I'm going to be a generalist. That's no good. You've got to be a specialist to succeed. No, honestly, you don't. You can do either. They're just equally important. And my sort of epiphany moment, I think, was when I was just after I got chartered, and I realised, I'd done design of reinforcement, I've done construction on site. I did a design with a very bijou company in London, and I realised what I was really good at was managing people. That's when I had the switch, when I was about 30. And I thought that's just something I can do naturally really well. I don't have to really get outside my comfort zone, which I did in really detailed design. I could do basic design, but the detail stuff was just not my cup of tea. So I was really pleased I had that moment, that sort of dawn of reality. And I think I had it because someone just sat me down and asked me the question. And I'd never really thought about it before, but it was so obvious when I came up with the answer. And that's then when I went overseas to be a manager. But never, I think if you're going to say, when you're 21, I'm going to be a CEO by the time I'm 40. No, there'll be lots of things that come your way that will take you different. It might be that, but there could be lots of other more interesting things. So don't get too honed in.
I think that's really, really interesting because actually what you were saying is, gaining the experience in lots of different areas. And then after some time, realizing what your real strength was, and then following that, and not laying out a plan for too long in advance, which also makes it sound like you managed to take the opportunities that were there of going overseas for for 5 years, and then following up, then coming back to the UK, and taking advantage of things as they change.
Definitely. Using change as a positive, always a positive.
Yeah. Lovely. And another question there, Jessica?
Yes, it's a follow-up question from Renee, who's very interested to find out how Sue ended up working abroad, because they would like to do the same at some point, and wants to know, how did you find the opportunities outside the UK, and what exactly about Thailand drew you there?
Okay. So this was a long time ago, but what I did, I wrote 100 letters to various companies that I knew had good work overseas. So I did my research first. Now you just send them an email. But I wrote 100 handwritten letters to companies saying, this is what I'm about, this is why I want to work overseas. I know you do X, Y, and Z. Would you give me just a half hour of your time so we can have a discussion on this? And one letter happened to land on a MD's desk just when he was about to push a button on a recruit. He was in Thailand, his CEO was in London, and I got asked just to go down and have a chat with this chap in Westminster, and I got the job. So it's like, give it a go. Sometimes don't use the conventional, wait for the adverts to come out. Get to know the people who are really doing good work overseas, and just say, this is what I want to do and why I want to do it. And Thailand is just, if anyone's ever been there, it's the most beautiful country. There's no one who wouldn't not go there. It's stunningly beautiful. The belief of the people in the middle path in the Buddhist way is it just warms the heart.
Excellent. So you're saying take advantage of opportunities. I mean, what you're saying there is you actually made that opportunity.
Yeah.
100 letters. Yeah. And I suspect that it might be in some ways easier now because so many organizations are global. And certainly some of the employers we've had in for our students in previous years have the potential for graduates to request placement overseas. So that thing of finding out what organizations do, who's working overseas, and who might have that in their graduate schemes might be another way of
absolutely,
looking for
absolutely.
opportunities.
But it's just so good. It's so different working overseas to working here. I think you learn at 3 times the rate overseas. So I recommend it to absolutely everyone. Spend at least 2, if not 3 years overseas. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Excellent. Another question, Jessica?
Yes, and it is, what do you propose to students of construction management who want to find a job in mega and complex projects? What kind of qualifications should they get for sure while or right after their studies?
I think it's useful, once you've done your studies, to consider becoming either a chartered engineer or a chartered project professional. And the reason I say that is my mum said to me, you get to that status, you don't fall under it ever. That means you're accepted not only academically, but you're accepted by your profession. And it might seem laborious at the time, because obviously you've done a lot of study, you want to just get out there and work, you don't want to do extracurricular activity, but it's really worth it, because not only do you become recognised for being chartered by your peers, but also you can network really, really well. You can become part of the boards and the panels. You can be, renowned for being a judge for the awards, or any of those things that just get you out there and get you meeting the people you need to meet to succeed. So I think getting chartered, definitely getting involved in the profession. I've always said to people in my life, I've had kind of my work, my profession, and my home life. It's like a Venn diagram, and that's what keeps me ticking. And the 3, one always balances the other 2. So definitely do that. And, just find out who's hiring on what projects. Often now on LinkedIn, it's dead easy. They're actually saying, come and join HS2. We're advertising yesterday. It's easier than it's ever been. So, just keep on LinkedIn, keep really well linked in with it. Don't hesitate to invite people you don't know. If you give a reason why you want to get linked in, people will link in with you, and that's a very effective, efficient way to do it.
Do you want to add a plug for the Association of Project Managers as a professional body of interest to many of our students?
I would love to. Thank you so much. We've been trying for many years to become chartered, and we are chartered, and we're the only chartered professional body for project and program management. So what I find is really exciting about this is we started off really as a cottage industry. We're now 26,000 strong. We're the only organisation in the world that offers this qualification. And you don't have to be a project manager. You can be in project controls, you can be a sponsor, you can be on the digital side of data. Anything that leads to projects and programs being delivered successfully and on time is what we're all about. And I think, from a client point of view, if I have a person who's, say, a chartered civil engineer, and another person who's a chartered QS and a chartered project professional in one, I will take that second person. So you have the chance in this generation to actually get chartered for 2 elements. One that says that you are, technically and professionally qualified in your chosen profession, and the other one saying, on top of that, I'm chartered in delivering major projects and programs, and that's extremely powerful.
Yeah, and in the slight interest of balance, two other professional bodies that are interesting, have been of interest for our students, are the Chartered Institute of Building and
Yes.
the Royal Institute of Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors.
Yeah.
So between those 3 professional bodies, there's certainly something there for any student in any of our courses.
Absolutely, any mix of those is extremely good.
Yeah, very valuable. Do we have another question there, Chisholm, at the moment?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Well, it gives me an opportunity to dive back in to ask a few more questions. Something you touched on earlier, Sue, was that you mentioned about the impact of both COVID and Brexit. And I thought it would be really valuable to hear what you think employers in the industry how they're dealing with, first of all, the pandemic, how they're dealing with that uncertainty, what problems it's caused for them?
Absolutely. I mean, the Construction Leadership Council have been exemplary in terms of advising government and guiding government on best practice and doing it really at pace, which is what we all needed. A real living example of what my first day at work was the first day of lockdown, first day of Costain. So immediately I had to adapt. We all had to adapt to these, Zooms and Teams and the rest of it. But then, I had to look across my portfolio and transportation, decide what to do with that. So the day after lockdown, the aviation industry crashed, basically. So I had to work out what to do with those people. We looked at actually moving off of major projects and programs in aviation and going to thermal imaging cameras, which we obviously hit the spot, literally with COVID. And then other elements around borders and controls, which are going to be relevant for Brexit. So I've got to kind of view that how I can keep that side of things going along. Rail, initially both TfL and Network Rail just closed down, so we're not moving any people, we're not doing anything. That moved very quickly, an example being Gatwick Airport Station, where we said, well, hang on a second, if we haven't got people getting on the planes, why don't we accelerate the work on the station? Huge win, and we gave all the workers their own pods, so they didn't cross-contaminate each other, and we've accelerated that project and saved almost a year on it. The highways industry almost immediately said all our workers are key workers and we're going to keep on building our roads because there weren't many people on the roads anymore. We managed to work Easter, both bank holidays, and we increased the productivity on it, and very successfully, whilst in all three sectors learning very good methods of working safely. So there was less people in canteens, there was marked out spaces where to sit in offices, there was people working from home where they could. There was we had digital devices that beeped when you were less than 2 meters from someone else. So we really coalesced as an organisation in Costain and also coalesced as an industry, whereby I had my Gatwick engineers actually explaining to TfL what they're doing at Gatwick, which went up to their board, which helped them make a decision on what they're going to do with their stations in London. Again, I've never seen that degree of collaboration before. It's fantastic.
And that seems to me really a story of finding all the opportunities in a crisis. Of moving people, but still a lot of work going on, a lot of critical work going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an amazing thing about a crisis, isn't it? Because you all fight the common enemy. So it does make you stronger. It really does make you stronger.
Brings people together, like you said. Yeah. Jessica, you've another question there.
Yes, we've got two, but we'll start, they're separate ones. First one from Zinni, who's asking, any advice on how to go about being chartered right after graduation, and how about the APM?
Okay, so this is getting chartered generally, is it?
I guess so.
Yeah. I think that it's to find a firm that strongly believes in you being chartered, which sounds obvious, but a lot don't. So I would find those firms. I mean, when I was at Taylor Woodrow, we used to be chartered under agreement. So you actually signed a 3-year agreement whereby you would get chartership, and they'd make sure you had all the supervision you need, all the different experiences from their different sites. You had the design office and the construction experience. So find a company that's going to back you up to get chartered, and all the good ones do, if I'm honest. So don't be drawn by an extra bit of pay rise if they don't offer what these other people offer, because it's important for your future. And the APM, literally go on the website. There's fantastic mentoring schemes for getting chartered. There's also some different layers under. If you just want to be a project professional or do a basic prints course, we offer that as well. So there's a whole suite of qualifications. You can choose the best one for you. And we've got a very good learning and development part of our organisation. I'd be very, very happy to help and suggest mentors again to help you through it.
Okay, and one that's a little bit connected is from Renee again, saying, thank you for taking time to speak to us. I'm a project management student, but I'm very interested in the publishing sector. I'd like to ask how publishing within the APM works, like with APM BOK? Who contributes to what is published, and how does the organization disseminate that knowledge?
Okay, so publishing within the APM is split between Project Magazine, which is really top-notch magazine every quarter, and then we do the webcasts, the podcasts, the interviews on LinkedIn. So it's that whole mix of things. We have special reports, we have research reports, we have a whole compendium really of different publishing methods. So if you are interested in specifically APM publishing, get in contact with them. Again, on the website, there's all the contacts there. If it's being a project manager in publishing, I'm sure there is, because there's huge project manager presence in the BBC, for example, in journalism. So there's bound to be the same in publishing, and also in banking. There's a huge, in lots of places you wouldn't actually expect project managers to be. They're just popping up all over the place because of the need to actually manage what we do more effectively and more efficiently. So I'm sure, I'm not very close to the publishing industry, but I'm sure there's opportunities there.
And I would just add to that also other professional bodies like CIBSE, which is the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, CIBSE, they produce a lot of industry guidance, so they publish a lot. Similarly, the architects body, Royal Institute of British Architects, they also will do reports. So most professional bodies will have some aspect of publishing as part of what they do. And I think that's a really, really good question, because you're looking there at bringing different skills together. So project management, potentially some background in construction, but bringing it into publishing, and that's that offers a lot to a potential employer, where you've got those together. So I think it was Renee was asked that question. Really good.
And I think, Renee, if you're a writer, if you're a really good writer, author, the world's your oyster in construction, because there aren't many of them. And look at infrastructure intelligence, look at new civil engineer, they're really good. They're specifically for construction, but I have a fantastic team of engineers, but I have very few good writers. And what we need when we do bids is really good writers who write compelling stories. So you've got a fantastic career ahead of you.
Fantastic. More questions there, Chisabel? Another has popped up there.
One's just popped up. Naum asks, how can you balance your personal life and family with your professional life, especially when taking into account traveling around the globe for career progression?
A very good question. I think in terms of managing the professional life and your home life, is you have to project manage it. You have to run a really tight ship. You need your budget, you need your schedules, you need to plan your holidays. Treat your life as a project, and you stand a chance of getting most things right. I think, and I actually used to, this is an admission, when my kids were really little, and before inclusion was as big as it is now, I used to put in diary dates for meetings that were going to my kids' Christmas concerts and shows, just so that no one would pick me up for it, but I could go there quite legitimately because it's in my diary. So I learned that one very fast. But I think overseas, the best thing about going overseas is with the family. I was brought up, I was born in New Zealand. I spent my life, really enjoying being overseas. And the great thing was with my dad particularly, and his workmates, there's a different ethic about kids. There's a lot more sharing of kids in New Zealand. My mum told me a story. There used to be sort of 5 or 6 couples, and they'd dump all their kids on one couple, and then they'd go out and have a good time in the barbecue and the rest, and come and pick the kids up and go. No one paid babysitters. They all looked after each other. And I think also, the real hard nuts about this is the childcare costs. Childcare is cheaper anywhere except the UK. So if you want to bring up your children, want a bit of help doing it as well, it's the best place to do it, honestly. You'll never regret it. If you decide to have kids overseas, you'll never regret it.
We've got a follow-up one. I think you're sparking everyone's interest now with different questions. So Georges wants to know, what do you propose for us to do in our first steps? This is in relation to I think, being chartered, should we start by APM project fundamentals qualifications? I am asking because there are plenty of certificates and institutes that we may not have the correct information about.
Yeah, I mean, you need to do the research, if I'm honest. Do the research, find what's closest to your needs and your experience. And PMI, Project Management Institute, are American cousins to qualifications as well. What I do find, not that I'm biased, but I do find the APM to be a little bit more, little less process-based, shall I say, than PMI, which I think is it's one of the niche things we have in UK project management. We approach things from very much intellectual level and not just following A to B to C to D. So, but do have a look around, find one that fits what you need, and don't just jump at it. As I said, there's people out there who can help you, who can mentor you through it, and who can give you advice.
Is there a mentorship scheme as part of APM?
There is for chartership, yeah.
Because another aspect of mentorship is certainly UCL alumni. There's a database of UCL alumni who also do and are happy to do mentoring. So yeah, so depending on what is of interest.
It's a good call. Yeah.
And actually, we've just put up a fresh new podcast from our UCL careers consultant talking about mentorship and how that can help in your career. Not just early on, but an important thing to look for actually is a good mentor.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
One little final one. Is it true that we must go through testing for APM chartership every 2 years or so?
It's not testing, there's a continuous professional development, which every professional institution has. So it's not onerous, you just got to keep records of where you go, what you do. It could be as simple as this call, for example, that can be part of your CPD, or it could be attending a lecture, it could be reading a new book on a new way of approaching construction. It could be getting involved in a local authority initiative. Anything that keeps you up to date, basically, with the current standards, so that you don't just, draw a huge sense of relief. Oh, I've got there now, I don't have to do any more development. It's something I think as human beings we all need to continuously develop and improve.
And a question on the chat there, Jessica, I see.
Yes. In the field of construction project management, how much will a PhD degree help my career? I'm hesitating to apply for a PhD in BIM. Is there any other PhD that I could consider?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because 9 months ago I would have given you a different answer. But I've discovered, I would have said probably not very much, if I'm honest, but now I have discovered Costain have 19 PhD students, and we work very closely with UCL to make sure that their PhDs will be able to be brought back into the industry and be made of use. So Tim Embley from Costain is kind of heading that up, and the Bartlett, I know, are very, very close to it. So I think if you do want to do a PhD, I just think choose very wisely on what it's going to be about and how much impact it can have on industry, and maybe talk to some PhD students that have already done it and found work afterwards. Yeah. But it is the whole thing about industry linking up with academia is just so needed now. We've all got to have joined forces to make our industry better.
Mm. There's also a track, an ND type of PhD, which is where somebody is working in industry while pursuing their PhD. We don't offer it in our school, but certainly many institutes do. So if you're interested in a PhD, that might be a track to look for, where, as I say, and that definitely has you developing your expertise that's relevant to industry alongside research. So that could be another possibility. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to dive in with a few questions while there's a gap on the Q&A. around just some of the basics about what can be useful for graduates to know when they're approaching employers as a new graduate. So what would you say that employers are looking for when they're recruiting a graduate?
I think they're looking for, I think I said right at the beginning, they take as given almost the experience and the academic qualifications, because you need that to graduate. What they're looking for is sort of the way people think in a very inventive way, the way people are open to different ideas, the way people have real spirit and personality that differentiates them from others. And the biggest one of all for me is someone that's willing to really give it a go. You know, it's got that energy and will get stuck in and really, you know, make a difference. And that's quite a rare thing in people. But when you see it, you just think we need this in barrel loads. We need people who just want to get stuck in and do things, and then the rest is a given around it.
Okay. And how can graduates demonstrate those kind of abilities?
I think you've got to do sort of extracurricular activities. So, you know, if you have gone out of your way to help a local school, for example, or you're involved in even Cubs and Scouts is a really good example of leadership qualities there and giving back to the community. It might be that you actually care about old people and you go around their homes and help them out on your weekends and stuff. It's just that something about giving and wanting to give more that's really, really important.
Really, really interesting that, because it's I think it goes against what most students assume, which is going to be marks are what count. And clearly what you've said, now just get some decent marks, and then what you want to offer is you as a person, what you can offer in your life skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get that outside the classroom as well. Yeah. Another question, possibly a slightly cheeky question. I was going to ask what's the best approach you've seen from someone applying for a job, but equally, if you have an example of the worst approach you've seen of this is what not to do.
Yeah, I'll give you the worst one. It's just when you send out a generic CV to everyone.
Yeah.
It is just, forget it, you might as well not send it. And particularly if it's got spelling mistakes in it and a picture on the front, forget that as well.
Any particularly good approaches that really struck you as, that really kind of stuck out from the pile?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a bit of bravery, this, but when you go, as I say, you know, you build up your professional career as well as your personal life. If you go to a lecture or you go to a seminar or you go to an event, if you see someone from an organisation you'd like to work for, go up and see them at the end. You might have to hang around for 10 or 15 minutes, but just say, you know, do your homework first. Obviously, well, I've really, you know, you're a fantastic speaker. I really like what you do and what your company does. And I've found out you do X, Y, and Z. Could I possibly have a coffee with you at some time? I personally, in the last 2 years, have employed 3 people that way. And they you know what, they never let me down. They've been brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So it's again the networking of trying to make those links.
Neve, can I ask a question that I've always wanted to know? Do you all read cover letters? Do they actually get read?
Oh, they do, because CVs become very boring after a bit.
I think there might be a note of caution there of it depends on the length of the cover letter.
Oh,
if
yeah, one page.
No.
Yeah, 1 page, A4.
Yeah. But the cover letter is worth glancing at to see, is the CV worth looking at?
Yeah.
Cover letter can be just, and a cover letter now is often a cover email, which means it needs to be even shorter. Still, yeah, sort of given enough interest there to go to make the reader think, yeah, actually that CV is worth looking at.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Excellent.
I've got another question. It's from Linda, who says, I have 8 years experience in the construction industry overseas, and I'm now doing my master's in construction economics and management. Do you think it's a good idea to apply to a graduate scheme and start basically from scratch in the UK or proceed with the same domain in the UAE? I'm just trying to understand the job market in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, the jobs are here for you. If you want to get professionally qualified, I'd talk to the Institution of Civil Engineers and ask for their advice on accreditation. Because if you get on the wrong course and it's not accredited, then you're wasting your time to get your professional qualifications.
And you'd also have a lot more to offer than a graduate who's come straight through.
Yeah.
So it depends on what's on offer, but you've got more going for you than many of your peers.
Yeah, and they have lots of reciprocal arrangements with other countries as well in terms of qualifications, which is always good to find out if you intend to go back and work there.
I've got a very interesting question from Renee. What level of stalking would you suggest in terms of grabbing an employer's attention in a cover letter?
I think don't be too cheesy in the covering letter. Just say it as it is, but at that end sentence, really make them want to go, yeah, this is worth looking further on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do so much as stalking. I would say just more sincerity in your cover letter. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The stalking can come in terms of following companies you're interested in on social media. That's really valuable. Get a feel for what they're interested in, what story they're putting out. Yeah, there's people at the end of it. So what might apply to somebody you know would apply to a potential employer as a guideline.
Yeah, it's actually a really good thing, isn't it, to be careful what you do put on social media, because some organisations screen you through your social media.
Yeah, from the careers point of view, that's something we try and get the second years to do. So anybody listening who hasn't checked their social media and looked at it critically, please do it today, this week, and make sure that you remove anything that could be of embarrassment or anything else, because particularly for jobs where due diligence might be expected, then you will be assessed on what you've got up on social media. So check it before the employer does.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we're at a point there, 7:05, and I think perhaps we might draw to a close there. I think we have had some really interesting questions, and I would say if you've got last minute questions now, do put them up. We could maybe take one or two more. And if there are any questions that we haven't handled, I will collate them and send them through to Sue and get the responses back up on Moodle, on the Careers Moodle page. But if we wrap it up there, I would like to, first of all, thank everybody who's contributed, and some really good questions there. And thanks to Chispa for her help, but particularly Sue, thank you very much. It's been really, really interesting hearing your career path and your view of what's happening in the industry. And I found it very heartening as well of the importance of what's going on, and that continued importance, even though there will be uncertain times. So very helpful, thank you. So I hope our listeners got some value from it as well. So we can close it there, I think. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you very much, both of you, as well, for organising this.
Okay. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. We have another question there, and if